Damn phones, Babylons can't crack the code.
Spencer Rattler is one of those players in today's game that is always talked about and has been talked about ever since he broke out on the scene at Pinnacle High School and made a name for himself as a top quarterback in the nation. And of course, just like a lot of quarterbacks, Spencer Rattler is obviously going to have a lot of traction around his names, eyes on him, because he is of course a quarterback. But having a Netflix series cover your high school life as a senior and being committed to one of the top schools in the nation, especially at the quarterback position in Oklahoma, you have everyone's eyes on you. His time at Oklahoma ended in a way that nobody ever thought it would have when he was coming out of high school. He was someone that was potentially going to win a Heisman, and instead, in his final season as a Sooner, he got benched for true freshman quarterback Caleb Williams, which ultimately ended up in him transferring at the very end of the season and ending up at South Carolina, where he would end up picking up hype around his name and, of course, South Carolina's football's names, as South Carolina finally had their answer at the quarterback position, and people thought that this 22 season would be a redemption season for Spencer Rattler. However, the redemption season that a lot of people were expecting has not come to fruition yet, as in 4 games into the 22 campaign for South Carolina is 2-2, with wins against Charleston and Georgia State, while Spencer Rattler is 61st in passing yards with 909 passing yards, 2 touchdowns compared to 5 interceptions, one of the worst QBR ratings, and one of the worst passer efficiency ratings in all of NCAA FBS Division I football. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about what's going on with Spencer Rattler. And as usual, before I move on, remember to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's get into it. Spencer Rattler is a player that's been known by college football fans and people who keep up with the sport for quite some time, as he was a 5-star #1 quarterback in the 2019 recruiting class from Pinnacle High School. It's not even just that, he's one of the best players in Arizona high school football history, as in his career, he set an Arizona high school passing record, throwing for 11,083 yards, 116 passing touchdowns, while also rushing for over 1,000 yards of rushing and 14 total touchdowns on the ground, while also being named an Elite 11 MVP. After his time at Pinnacle, he would take his talents to Oklahoma to be their next heir and next great quarterback, following a year of redshirt under Heisman finalist Jalen Hurts. After the one lone redshirt season, 2020 would be the kickoff to the Spencer Rattler era at Oklahoma. His first few games of conference play were a little shaky, but after the second half of the Texas game, Spencer Rattler was on fire and really solidified himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, as he led OU to a Big 12 title win and a New Year's Six Bowl win in the Cotton Bowl over Florida, and he had overall a great season, completing 68% of his passes, thrown for over 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns through the air, 7 interceptions, while accounting for a total of 6 rushing touchdowns. After a strong finish, he would officially be looked at as a lead Heisman contender going into 2021. However, in his 21 campaign, Rattler was far from the Heisman frontrunner that he had going into the season, as he was honestly struggling quite a bit with some of the expectations that he had upon him. He wasn't playing terrible, but he wasn't playing good either. He was just playing pretty mediocre, as he was struggling with turning over the ball, but OU was ultimately winning. But the line would be drawn after a very rough start versus Texas, and he would eventually get benched for Caleb Williams. He would never take the job back, being a backup for the rest of the season, and once Lincoln Riley left OU, he entered the portal and would find himself at South Carolina. This move to South Carolina at the time was quite surprising, as many people thought Spencer Rattler was going to go to the Pac-12, joining UCLA, or even Arizona State, going back home to his home state, very close to where he lived. Now, Spencer Rattler's move to South Carolina also brought a lot of hype, as he is a quarterback that was seen as a Heisman frontrunner heading into 2021. People still thought he was good, and I thought he was good as well, and I thought this was going to be a redemption tour, and South Carolina was a team in 2021 that had a lot better of a season than many people projected them to have, as a lot of people thought they weren't going to go to a bowl game, and they ended up making one and winning it. And all of that with a lack of consistent quarterback play. And although Rattler has a lot of criticisms from a lot of people about his game and how he plays it, there's one thing that I feel like was universally accepted by even the haters of Spencer Rattler, is that he was better than all the quarterbacks that South Carolina had in 2021, and this was supposed to be a huge upgrade. However, looking at it today, nothing has really come to fruition. The underrated and potentially sleeper squad of South Carolina in 2022 isn't necessarily panning out the way that people thought it would early on, and neither is Spencer Rattler. As stated earlier in the video, Spencer Rattler has been one of the worst efficient quarterbacks and even has one of the lower QBRs. He only has 2 touchdown passes in 4 games and has 5 interceptions in 4 games. His pass completion percentage isn't bad, and neither is his yards. However, this is not the start that's going to be acceptable for South Carolina, as they're about to ramp up and go against some of the tough teams in the SEC East, a division that looks its best in a very long time, and quarterback play is going to be crucial. And if Spencer Rattler, and not even just him, the team in general, if they don't step up, this is going to be an ugly season for the Gamecocks. Now, why is Spencer Rattler not playing the way that many people expected him to? Even against teams like Georgia State and Charlotte, both teams that are supposed to be easier wins for South Carolina and stat pad games for a lot of people on the team, especially the quarterback position. But both those games, Rattler hasn't looked impressive in. He threw 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions versus Georgia State, and versus Charlotte, he had 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. His best game of the season was in a loss to Arkansas, 44-30, where he did throw for 377 yards, completed about 62% of his passes, had a touchdown and an interception. However, the week after that, he faced against one of the best defenses in all of college football and completely laid an egg, throwing 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, throwing for a total of 118 yards, and South Carolina only scoring 7 points. There's a few different ways to look at Spencer Rattler and the struggles that he's having. You can look at the offensive line for South Carolina. When looking at the offensive line for South Carolina, they have not been a very good group, as they've given up some of the most sacks in the nation, and quarterback protection has overall not been very good. And with a quarterback like Spencer Rattler, who in my opinion is not the most mobile quarterback, and does a lot better just like all quarterbacks with a cleaner pocket, but Rattler is not the best when he has to be mobile. Yes, he can throw on the run and make some crazy throws, but you don't want to have your quarterback doing that the entire game, no matter what. There's also another point to look at with Spencer Rattler himself, is that he's just straight up not playing good ball. Sometimes he makes passes that are just dumb. He throws them in double coverage, triple coverage, and sometimes moves around outside the pocket scrambling unnecessarily. One thing for sure, Spencer Rattler in South Carolina are really going to have to pick it up. South Carolina is 2-2 right now, and their remaining schedule, they play at Kentucky, versus Texas A&M, versus Missouri, at Vanderbilt, at Florida, versus Tennessee, and at Clemson. That's not an easy remaining schedule. The 2 easiest games are obviously Vanderbilt and Missouri, but those other games are going to be very tough, as Kentucky, they have a good defense. Texas A&M, they have a good defense. Florida in the swamp, that's not an easy thing to do. Tennessee, they're looking really good and are even in fact a top 10 team in the AP poll. And Clemson, we all know about Clemson, and it's hard to play at Clemson. Quarterback play is going to be crucial for the Gamecocks for the rest of the season. And if Spencer Rattler doesn't pick up his production, we could potentially see him benched for a 3rd time in his career, this time for Luke Doughty. Well guys, if you made it this far in the video, drop something down in the comment section below. How do you think Spencer Rattler is going to play for the rest of the 22 campaign? And before you head out, remember to smash that like button, turn on those post notifications, and subscribe if you haven't already. B. Kelly out.